Princess Zixandra stood in the great hall of the Galactic Council, her crystalline skin glowing with anger. The light from her body cast strange shadows on the walls as she listened to the proposal. Her long fingers gripped the edge of the speaking platform so hard that small cracks appeared in the metal. "You want me to marry one of them?" she said, her voice sharp like breaking glass. "A human?" The council members shifted in their seats. Some had tentacles, others had scales, and a few looked like walking trees. But they all seemed uncomfortable with her reaction. The proposal had been simple enough. Earth needed protection from hostile alien forces. The ethereal hegemony needed a new ally. A marriage between their princess and Earth's representative would seal the deal. Ambassador Krell, who looked like a giant crab wearing formal robes, cleared his throat. "Princess, this union would bring great benefits to both our peoples. The humans may be new to galactic society, but they have shown remarkable potential." Zixandra laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Potential? Have you seen them? They are weak creatures made of soft flesh and water. They live for barely 100 years, while we live for thousands. They cannot even change the color of their skin or speak with their minds. What could such primitive beings possibly offer us?" Across the hall, Captain Marcus Chen stood quietly. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. He wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Nothing about him looked special compared to the other beings in the room. No glowing skin, no extra arms. No signs of the advanced evolution that marked most galactic species. Marcus had been listening to the princess speak. He understood every word, though he showed no anger at her insults. When she finished, he stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Your Highness," he said in clear, simple words, "I understand your concerns. My people are indeed different from yours. We do not live as long, and we do not have many of the abilities that other species possess." Zixandra turned to face him fully. Up close, she could see how ordinary he looked. His skin was just one color, a light brown that never changed. His eyes were simple brown circles with no inner light. Even his hair was plain black with no special patterns. "Then you agree," she said. "This marriage would be beneath my station. I am the heir to a civilization that has mastered energy itself. You represent a species that still burns fossil fuels and fights wars with metal bullets." Marcus nodded slowly. "That is true. We are still learning many things. But perhaps that is exactly why this alliance could work." "Explain," said Ambassador Krell, leaning forward with interest. Not Marcus looked around the room at all the different alien faces watching him. "Every species here has evolved beyond certain struggles. You have solved the problems of disease, aging, resource scarcity. These are wonderful achievements. But my people are still fighting those battles every day. We have learned different lessons." Zixandra crossed her arms. "What lessons could we possibly need from beings who cannot even heal their own wounds properly?" "The lesson of endurance," Marcus said simply. "The lesson of never giving up when everything seems hopeless. The lesson of protecting others even when you are barely surviving yourself." The princess made a sound of disgust. "Pretty words, but words are cheap. I have seen the reports about Earth. Your people fight constantly. Wars over land, over resources, over ideas. You destroy your own environment and then scramble to fix it. This is not wisdom. This is chaos." Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully about his next words. "Your Highness, may I ask you something?" "Speak." "In your long life, have you ever faced a situation where death seemed certain? Where everything you cared about was about to be lost forever?" Zixandra frowned. "Of course not. Our technology prevents such crude situations from arising." "Then with respect, Your Highness, you have never been tested in the way my people are tested every day. We live with the knowledge that death can come at any moment. Disease, accident, violence, natural disasters, any of these can end our lives without warning. Yet we continue to build, to create, to love, to hope. The hall was very quiet now. Even the translator devices seemed to hum more softly. Marcus continued. You see chaos in our conflicts, but I see a species that refuses to give up. You see primitive violence in our wars, but I see people fighting to protect what they believe is right, even when they know they might die trying. And you think this makes you worthy of alliance with us? Zixandra asked. I think it makes us different from anyone else you will ever meet, Marcus replied. Your people have transcended struggle. That is a great achievement. But my people have learned to thrive within struggle. We have become something that exists nowhere else in the galaxy. A species that knows it is mortal, yet acts as if it is immortal. Ambassador Krell spoke up. The human makes an interesting point, Princess. Perhaps we should consider. No. Zixandra cut him off with a sharp gesture. I will not bind myself to a creature whose entire existence is built on desperation and fear. My people represent the highest evolution of consciousness in this galaxy. We will not dilute our bloodline with primitive genetic material. Marcus showed no anger at these words, though several other council members shifted uncomfortably. Instead, he bowed again. I understand your decision, Your Highness. I hope you will not think badly of me if I make one final request. What is it? Before the negotiations end completely, would you consider a brief cultural exchange? 3 days where you could observe my people directly, not through reports or recordings, but in person. If after seeing us with your own eyes, you still believe we have nothing to offer, I will accept your decision without question. Zixandra was about to refuse immediately, but something in his tone made her pause. There was no pleading in his voice, no desperation. Just a simple request made with quiet dignity. Ambassador Krell looked interested. A reasonable suggestion. Princess, it would demonstrate the wisdom and fairness for which your people are known throughout the galaxy. Zixandra realized she was being maneuvered, but she also realized that refusing might make her look afraid. That was unacceptable for someone of her status. Very well, she said finally. 3 days. But do not expect this to change anything. I know what humans are, and no amount of observation will convince me otherwise. Marcus smiled slightly, the first real emotion he had shown since entering the hall. Thank you, Your Highness. I think you might be surprised by what you discover. The transport ship carrying Princess Zixandra and Captain Marcus Chun dropped out of hyperspace near a human colony world called New Haven. Through the viewing port, Zixandra could see a blue and green planet that looked almost exactly like the original Earth she had studied in the diplomatic files. Another copy of your home world, she said, not trying to hide the boredom in her voice. How unimaginative. Marcus looked out at the planet with something that might have been fondness. We tend to prefer worlds that can support us naturally. Less energy required for environmental controls. Yes, I read that in the files. Your people still require perfect atmospheric conditions, specific gravity, precise temperature ranges. So limiting. Zixandra's own body could survive in the vacuum of space for short periods, and her people routinely colonize worlds that would kill most species instantly. Different approaches, Marcus said simply. May I show you something specific first? There is a settlement that I think might interest you. The settlement turned out to be a collection of simple buildings scattered across a valley floor. From orbit, it looked small and temporary compared to the great floating cities that Zixandra's people built. No massive energy shields, no towers reaching into the clouds, no visible signs of advanced technology. It looks barely civilized, Zixandra said as their shuttle descended. The colonists have been here for only 2 years, Marcus explained. They are still building. When they landed, Zixandra expected to meet with local leaders in some kind of formal ceremony. Instead, Marcus led her directly into the settlement where ordinary humans were going about their daily work. Children ran between buildings, chasing each other and laughing. Adults carried tools and materials, building new structures and repairing old ones. "Where are your leaders?" Zixandra asked. "Working," Marcus said. "Leadership here is not a position you hold. It is something you do when needed." They stopped near a construction site where humans were assembling the frame of a new building. Zixandra watched with growing confusion. The work looked difficult and slow. The humans had to struggle with heavy materials, using only simple machines and their own physical strength. Sweat covered their faces, and some showed signs of minor injuries from the work. "Why do they not use energy manipulation to lift the materials?" she asked. "Even basic gravity control would make this task simple." "We do not have gravity control," Marcus said. "We use what we have." "But surely you have mechanical labor." "Units? Automated construction systems?" "Some settlements do. This one chose to build manually. They say it creates stronger community bonds." Zixandra stared at him. "You mean they choose to work harder than necessary?" "Sometimes, yes." She watched the workers for several more minutes, trying to understand what she was seeing. One woman had clearly injured her hand somehow. Zixandra could see blood through makeshift bandages. Yet she continued working, simply adjusting her grip to favor the uninjured fingers. "Why does she not stop for medical treatment?" Zixandra asked. Marcus looked where she was pointing. "Maria? Her injury is not serious enough to require immediate attention. The medical bay is busy with more severe cases." "More severe cases?" "There was an accident yesterday at the mining operation. Several workers were hurt. Maria knows that others need treatment more than she does." Zixandra felt a strange confusion growing in her mind. Among her people, any injury would be healed immediately using biological regeneration techniques. The idea of deliberately delaying treatment made no sense. Does she not fear that the injury might worsen? "Perhaps," Marcus said, "but she fears letting down her team more." They continued walking through the settlement. Zixandra began to notice other things that puzzled her. Children playing in areas that still showed signs of recent construction damage, cracked foundations, scattered debris, obvious signs of some kind of structural failure. "What happened here?" she asked. "Storm season 3 months ago," Marcus said casually. "Winds hit harder than expected. Took down about half the settlement." "And you rebuilt in the same location?" "Of course. The location has good water access and fertile soil. A few storms are not enough reason to abandon it." Zixandra stopped walking. "A few storms? This storm destroyed half your settlement, yet you speak of it like minor weather." Marcus seemed genuinely surprised by her reaction. "Well, it was minor weather. No one was killed, and we learned valuable lessons about construction techniques for the next time." "The next time?" "Storm seasons come every year here. We will probably face worse weather in the future, but that is part of living on a frontier world." They visited the medical facility next. Zixandra expected to find advanced healing technology similar to what other galactic species used. Instead, she found humans using primitive surgical techniques, chemical medications, and what they called physical therapy, a process that seemed to involve deliberate, repeated stress on injured body parts. "This is barbaric," she said quietly to Marcus as she watched the young man learning to walk again after some kind of accident. "Why do you not simply regenerate his damaged tissue?" "We cannot regenerate tissue the way your people can," Marcus said. "We heal slowly and sometimes incompletely, but we adapt." "Adapt?" "Watch him carefully. See how he moves? He's learning to walk in a way that compensates for permanent damage to his leg. In 6 months, he will be able to run again. Maybe not as fast as before, but fast enough. Zixandra watched the young man struggle through his exercises. His face showed pain with each step, but also determination. When he completed a particularly difficult movement, the other patients in the facility cheered for him. Some of them had injuries that looked even worse than his. "They celebrate such small progress?" she asked. "Every step forward matters when you start from nothing," Marcus said. That young man was told he might never walk again. Proving the doctors wrong is worth celebrating. As the day continued, Zixandra saw more and more things that challenged her understanding. Humans working dangerous jobs without adequate safety equipment because resources were limited. Families sharing small living spaces without complaint. Children learning lessons that included detailed information about death and injury, as if these topics were normal parts of education. "You teach your young about mortality?" she asked during a visit to the school. "Of course," the teacher replied. "How else would they learn to value life properly?" That evening, Marcus and Zixandra sat on a hill overlooking the settlement. The humans below moved through their routines despite the various hardships she had observed. Lights came on in windows as families gathered for meals. Somewhere, someone was playing music on a simple stringed instrument. "Your people seem strangely content," Zixandra said finally, despite living with constant danger and discomfort. Marcus was quiet for a moment, looking down at the settlement. "Tell me, Your Highness, in your long life, have you ever experienced true satisfaction? The feeling that comes from overcoming something that seemed impossible?" "We do not face impossible situations. Our technology and abilities allow us to solve problems before they become serious." "I see." Marcus picked up a small stone and turned it over in his hands. "Then you have never felt what these people feel every day. The satisfaction of surviving something that could have destroyed you. The joy of helping others when you barely have enough for yourself. The pride of building something beautiful in a place where nothing should be able to grow." Zixandra looked down at the settlement again, trying to see it through his eyes. The buildings still looked crude and temporary. The people still looked fragile and struggling. But something in Marcus's words made her wonder if she was missing something important. "You think struggle makes you strong?" she asked. "I think struggle teaches you what strength really means," Marcus replied. "Tomorrow I will show you something else. Something that might help you understand why we humans are different from everyone else in the galaxy." That night, Zixandra lay in the simple guest quarters they had prepared for her, thinking about everything she had seen. The humans confused her in ways she had never experienced before. They seemed to deliberately choose difficulty over ease, danger over safety, slow growth over instant solutions. Yet they did not seem unhappy. If anything, they seemed more alive than many of the advanced species she knew. She fell asleep wondering what Marcus planned to show her tomorrow. "How do you do this?" Zixandra asked the group quietly. "How do you count? How do you do this?" Zixandra asked the group quietly. "How do you count that night?" The relief workers gathered around several small fires scattered through what remained of the city center. Zixandra sat with Marcus and about 20 other humans, sharing simple food from emergency supplies. The conversations were quiet, tired voices discussing the day's progress and tomorrow's plans. Zixandra noticed that Marcus moved carefully, favoring his left side. When he thought no one was watching, he pressed his hand against his ribs with a grimace of pain. "You are injured," she said quietly. Marcus glanced at her, then looked away. "Nothing serious. Pulled something when we were moving that concrete beam this morning. You should seek medical attention. The medics are busy with people who need help more than I do." He shifted position, trying to find a more comfortable way to sit. "This will heal on its own in a few days." Zixandra stared at him. "You are the diplomatic representative of your entire species. If you are injured, Surely that takes priority. Marcus smiled slightly, but there was no humor in it. Your Highness, one of the things you need to understand about humans is that we do not measure a person's worth by their title or position. A hurt child gets treatment before a hurt ambassador. That is how it should be. Around the fire, other workers were sharing their own stories from the day. An elderly woman named Helen talked about finding a family's pet cat alive in the ruins of their house. A young man named David described successfully restoring power to a temporary shelter. Each small victory was celebrated as if it were a great triumph, but Zixandra began to notice other things in their stories. Helen mentioned casually that she had not eaten anything in 18 hours because she kept giving her food rations to hungry children. David's hands were covered in electrical burns from working with damaged power systems without proper protective equipment. Why do you not speak about your own suffering? She asked the group. I have observed all of you enduring significant hardship today. Yet you only discuss your successes in helping others. The workers looked at each other uncertainly, as if her question made no sense. What would be the point of complaining? Helen asked. Everyone here has problems. Talking about them does not solve anything. But surely acknowledging your pain is important for processing trauma. David laughed, though it was a tired sound. Lady, we are not processing anything right now. We are surviving. There will be time for processing after everyone is safe and fed and housed. Marcus stood up slowly, clearly stiff from his injury. Your Highness, would you like to hear some stories about who these people really are? I mean, who they were before this disaster. Zixandra nodded. Marcus gestured toward Helen. Helen was a retired teacher. Lost her husband 2 years ago to cancer. She had just started to build a new life for herself when the earthquake hit. Her apartment was completely destroyed. She lost everything she owned, including all her photographs and mementos of her marriage. Helen smiled sadly. 43 years of memories, gone in 30 seconds. But you know what? I am still here. I can still help people. That is what matters. And David, Marcus continued, just graduated from university with an engineering degree. He had a job offer from a company in another city. Good pay, bright future. The disaster hit 3 days before he was supposed to start his new life. David shrugged. The job will wait or will not. Right now, people need power restored to the emergency shelters. That is more important than my career plans. Marcus went around the circle, telling Zixandra about each person. Sarah, who had been planning her wedding when the disaster struck. The church where she was supposed to be married next week was now a pile of rubble. Tom, who owned a small business that had taken him 15 years to build, now completely destroyed. Maria, a single mother whose apartment was gone and who had no idea how she would care for her. Children. Each story was a catalog of devastating personal losses. Yet each person spoke about their situation with the same matter-of-fact acceptance that Marcus had shown when discussing his injury. Do you not feel anger? Zixandra asked. Grief? Fear for the future? Of course we do, Sarah said softly. But feeling those things right now does not help anyone. There will be time for grief later, after we take care of the immediate crisis. How do you know that? Zixandra pressed. How do you know there will be time later? How do you know you will survive long enough to grieve properly? The group fell silent. Finally, Tom answered. We do not know. None of us know if we will survive tomorrow, or next week, or next year. Humans never know that. But we act as if we will survive, because giving up guarantees that we will not. Marcus sat back down carefully, wincing as he did so. Your Highness, may I tell you something about my own life? Please. I was born in a refugee camp during a war between two human nations. My parents had fled their home when I was 3 months old. The camp was supposed to be temporary, but the war lasted 8 years. I grew up in a place where food was scarce, medical care was limited, and death was a constant presence. He paused, looking into the fire. When I was 12, a disease outbreak swept through the camp. My mother got sick. We had medicine that might have helped her, but not enough for everyone who needed it. She insisted that it go to the children who were sicker than she was. She died, Zixandra said quietly. Yes, but 3 children lived because of that medicine, including a little girl who grew up to become one of Earth's finest doctors. She has probably saved hundreds of lives in her career. And your father? Died 2 years later in an accident while working to build better sanitation systems for the camp. He was trying to prevent another disease outbreak. Marcus smiled, but it was a sad expression. I was 14 when I became an orphan. But the other refugees in the camp took care of me. Fed me, taught me, helped me get an education. Not because they had to, but because that is what humans do. Zixandra was quiet for a long moment. You have lived a life of constant loss. I have lived a life of constant connection, Marcus corrected gently. Every loss taught me something about what is truly valuable. Every person who helped me showed me what it means to be human. Around the fire, other people began sharing their own stories. Tales of parents who died young, of siblings lost to accidents or disease, of homes destroyed by natural disasters or war. But every story of loss was also a story of someone else stepping forward to help, to care, to rebuild. Zixandra listened in growing amazement. All of you have experienced multiple catastrophic losses in your lives? Every human has, Helen said simply. We live maybe 80 or 90 years, if we are lucky. Our bodies break down constantly. We get sick, we get injured, we age, we die. Everyone we love will die eventually. Every place we call home will eventually be destroyed or abandoned. But you continue to love people and places anyway, Zixandra said, even knowing that loss is inevitable. Because the alternative is to love nothing, David said. And the life without love is not really life at all. Marcus stood up again, moving even more stiffly than before. Your Highness, I need to check on the overnight rescue operations. Would you like to come with me? As they walked through the dark ruins, Marcus explained more about human psychology. We call it resilience, but that word does not really capture it completely. Resilience suggests bouncing back to your original state. Humans do something different. We adapt. We become something new that can handle whatever comes next. They stopped in a building where rescue teams were still working by artificial light to free trapped survivors. The workers had been at this for more than 12 hours, yet they moved with steady determination. See that woman there? Marcus pointed to someone directing the rescue effort. Her name is Captain Rodriguez. She lost her entire family in a similar disaster 10 years ago. Instead of breaking down, she became one of our best emergency coordinators. Her grief turned into expertise that has saved hundreds of lives. She uses her pain as motivation. She transforms her pain into purpose. That is what humans do. We take our worst experiences and find ways to use them to help others avoid the same suffering. They watched the rescue work for another hour. When a survivor was finally pulled free, a young man who had been trapped for almost 3 days, Captain Rodriguez did not celebrate. Instead, she immediately turned her attention to coordinating the search for more survivors. Does she not feel satisfaction at her success? Zixandra asked. She feels satisfaction, Marcus said. But she also knows that feeling good about saving one person while others are still trapped is a luxury she cannot afford. There will be time for satisfaction later, when everyone who can be saved has been saved. As they walked back to the fire, Marcus stumbled slightly. His injury was clearly getting worse, but he made no complaint. Captain Chun, Zixandra said formally, I am beginning to understand something about your species that I did not expect. What is that, Your Highness? You are all heroes. Every single human I've met today is living with a level of courage and selflessness that would be remarkable in any single individual. Yet, you treat it as normal behavior. Marcus was quiet for a moment. We do not think of ourselves as heroes, Your Highness. We think of ourselves as people doing what needs to be done. The courage you see is not special. It is just what happens when you grow up. The final morning of their time together came sooner than Zixandra expected. She had slept poorly, her mind full of everything she had seen and heard over the past 3 days. When she found Marcus, he was helping to coordinate the evacuation of an area where geologists had detected signs of potential further seismic activity. More danger? She asked. Always more danger, Marcus replied without looking up from his planning charts. Living on Earth means accepting that the planet will periodically try to kill us. But we have learned to watch for warning signs and respond quickly when they appear. Zixandra watched him work, noting that he moved even more stiffly than the night before. His injury had clearly worsened, yet he continued to function as if nothing was wrong. Captain Chun, you need medical attention, she said firmly. After the evacuation is complete, he replied. We need to move 3,000 people to higher ground before the afternoon. Every available person has to help with transportation and logistics. But you are clearly in significant pain. Marcus finally looked up at her, and for a moment his calm mask slipped. She could see the exhaustion and discomfort in his eyes. But then he smiled, and the expression was genuine despite his pain. Your Highness, let me tell you the most important secret about humanity. We are all in pain, all the time. Physical pain, emotional pain, existential pain. Our bodies hurt, our hearts break, our minds struggle with questions that have no answers. But we have learned that pain shared is pain lessened, and work shared is work multiplied. He gestured toward the evacuation area where thousands of humans were organizing themselves into orderly groups, helping elderly and disabled people, carrying children, loading essential supplies onto vehicles. Every single person you see there is dealing with their own private suffering. Lost homes, lost loved ones, uncertain futures, physical injuries, emotional trauma. Yet they all showed up this morning to help each other reach safety. That is what humans are, a species that treats individual survival as a community responsibility. Zixandra stood quietly watching the evacuation for a long time. What she saw challenged everything she thought she knew about civilization and evolution. Her people had eliminated suffering through technology and biological superiority. They lived for thousands of years without pain, without loss, without fear. They had achieved what most species considered the ultimate goal of intelligence: complete mastery over their environment and themselves. But watching the humans, she began to understand that something had been lost in that achievement. Her people were safe, comfortable, and powerful, but they had also become isolated from each other in ways that mattered. When was the last time a member of her species had risked their own well-being to help a stranger? When had any of them felt the kind of profound connection that came from surviving hardship together? Marcus, she said quietly, may I ask you something personal? Of course. If you could have the abilities my people possess, indefinite lifespan, immunity to disease and injury, freedom from all forms of suffering, would you choose to become like us? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. That is a fascinating question, Your Highness. The honest answer is that part of me would be tempted. The idea of never watching someone I care about die, never feeling physical pain, never worrying about survival. It sounds appealing, but I think it would also mean never feeling the satisfaction that comes from overcoming something difficult, never experiencing the deep joy that follows great sorrow, never knowing the strength that comes from choosing hope when hope seems impossible. He paused, watching a group of volunteers helping an elderly man who was struggling with the evacuation process. More than that, Marcus continued, I think it would mean never knowing what it feels like to be truly needed. Your people are self-sufficient in ways that make deep interdependence unnecessary. But humans need each other in fundamental ways. That need creates bonds that I suspect are stronger than any your people experience. You are saying that weakness creates strength? I am saying that vulnerability creates connection. When you know that you cannot survive alone, you build relationships based on mutual dependence and mutual care. When you know that everyone you love is mortal, you treasure them in ways that immortal beings might not understand. The evacuation was proceeding smoothly, but Zixandra could see the enormous effort it required. Hundreds of humans working in perfect coordination, each person doing whatever needed to be done without waiting for orders or expecting recognition. How do they know what to do? She asked. I see no central command structure, no detailed assignments. Yet everyone seems to understand their role perfectly. Because they have done this before, Marcus said. Not this exact situation, but something similar. Every human grows up learning how to respond to emergencies, how to take care of people who need help, how to work together when survival depends on cooperation. These are the most basic skills of being human. As the morning progressed, Zixandra found herself helping with the evacuation efforts. It started when she saw a small child struggling to carry a bag that was too heavy for her. Without thinking, Zixandra picked up the bag and walked with the child toward the transportation area. Thank you, the child said simply, then took Zixandra's hand and walked with her, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The simple gesture affected Zixandra more than she had expected. When was the last time someone had trusted her so completely without knowing anything about her status or abilities? When had she last felt needed for who she was rather than what she represented? She helped with other small tasks throughout the morning, guiding families toward vehicles, carrying supplies, assisting people who needed extra support. Each interaction was brief and practical, yet somehow meaningful in ways that the formal ceremonies of her own culture had never been taught by early afternoon. The evacuation was complete. The area that had been full of activity just hours before now stood empty, except for a few monitoring teams checking for seismic changes. Marcus finally agreed to visit the medical station for treatment of his injury. Zixandra waited outside while human doctors examined him. When he emerged with his ribs properly bandaged and his movement significantly improved, she was ready with her decision. Captain Chun, she said formally, I need to tell you something important. Yes, Your Highness? 3 days ago, I rejected your marriage proposal because I believed humans were primitive and weak. I thought my people would be lowering ourselves by allying with your species. Marcus nodded calmly, showing no surprise at her directness. I was wrong, she continued. Not about your primitiveness. You are primitive compared to most galactic species. Not about your weakness. You are physically fragile in ways that more advanced species have overcome. I was wrong about what those qualities mean. She paused, looking out over the disaster area where humans were already beginning the long process of rebuilding. Your people have mastered something that mine have forgotten, if we ever knew it at all. You have learned how to transform suffering into wisdom, weakness into compassion, mortality into meaning. You have discovered that true strength comes not from avoiding difficulty, but from facing it together. Marcus waited patiently for her to continue. More than that, Zixandra said. You have created something that I believe is unique in the galaxy. You are a species that knows it is mortal, yet acts as if its ideals are eternal. You know you are weak, yet you choose to protect others who are weaker. You know you will suffer, yet you deliberately seek out opportunities to prevent others from suffering. And what conclusion do you draw from this? Marcus asked. Zixandra turned to face him directly. I conclude that the galaxy needs to learn what humans have to teach. My people have achieved technological and biological superiority, but we have lost touch with the values that make life worth living. Other species have solved the problems of scarcity and survival, but in doing so, they have also solved the challenges that create meaning and connection. She paused, then smiled for the first time since he had known her. I accept your proposal, Captain Chun, not because my people need the protection of a marriage alliance, but because we need to learn how to be human again. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice held genuine emotion. Your Highness, I am honored by your decision, but I want you to understand what you are choosing. Marriage to a human means accepting that your partner will age and die while you continue living. It means watching him struggle with problems you could solve easily with your superior abilities. It means loving someone knowing that loss is inevitable. Yes, Zixandra said simply. I understand. And I think that might be exactly what I need to learn. 6 months later, the wedding ceremony took place on Earth, in the rebuilt plaza of the city where Zixandra had first witnessed humanity's response to disaster. Representatives from dozens of galactic species attended, many of them curious about what had changed the famously proud princess's mind about humans. The ceremony incorporated traditions from both cultures. Zixandra's people contributed crystalline decorations that transformed the plaza into a space of ethereal beauty. The humans contributed something simpler but equally meaningful: